Hi there, my name is Robin and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about one of my favorite reads of the year so far, and that is The Girl in the Tower by Katherine Arden. So, The Bear and the Nightingale was one of my favorite fairy tale style fantasy novels in recent memory, and I was pretty excited to continue the story in The Girl in the Tower. And it didn't take long for things to get going because The Girl in the Tower actually picks up immediately after The Bear and the Nightingale. And in this one, Vasya has left her village, and she's finally on the road to travel and see the world, and basically escape the persecution she was facing. But of course, she's on the road, which means she can get involved in stuff, and that's exactly what happens. She becomes embroiled in a string of events that have quite far-reaching consequences. And ultimately, she actually ends up visiting her sister in Moscow and seeing her cousin, who happens to be the Grand Prince. So, right out of the gate, it was obvious that this was going to be a very different novel from The Bear and the Nightingale. I actually found it quite a bit more grounded. It has more, whereas The Bear and the Nightingale was much more of a mythic fairy tale retelling kind of story. The Girl in the Tower was much more grounded. It's much more of a high fantasy story. The focus is a lot more on political intrigue and subplots and these kind of things. It basically suffers from middle book syndrome in fantasy. The majority of the time is spent in political intrigue and scheming and drama, and the characters trying to basically move each other around on the chessboard. And you know what I'm talking about as a fan of the genre. The other thing that was different in this novel is that the fantastical elements that I enjoyed so much in The Bear and the Nightingale, they were actually much more reduced. They were still present. There are still some pretty crazy moments, some moments that really fit, but overall we see a reining in of that aspect of the story. It's a much more human-centric story than the first. But it still all makes for some fun reading, because there are certainly a lot of fantastical elements, and political intrigue is fun to read about. For me, at least. For some people, you may find it frustrating the way that this story unfolds. I was hooked. I very much love this series at this point, so I didn't even bat an eye. I just kept going and going and going. One thing did strike me is, as I read through, there were some things that you just know are just staging points and setup and seeds that will pay off in the third book, the finale of the trilogy. It is what it is. It is set up. It is the middle book of a trilogy, so I guess that is expected. It was a little more on the nose than I expected. Can this book work as a standalone? I don't really think so. It's very much a middle book, and it even, at one point, looking back on it now, it even reads like the first book of a duology. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that this book and the sequel were written in one shot, and then they were just split apart. It's that heavily intertwined. One good thing about the fantastical element that is present in this story is that we get a little more expansion. We get a little more deepening of the lore. We get introduced to more elements from Russian mythology, which is branch that I'm relatively unfamiliar with, so that was quite fun to read about. Overall, I really liked it. I really liked it, even though it was missing my bar none favorite part of the first book, which was that mythic fairy tale retelling style of Katherine Arden's. It would, as much as it wasn't present in this book, I think if she tried to write it with that style, it would have failed, because at the end of the day, this is a very different type of story from the first book. This is much more human-centric, this is much more intrigue-driven, and a fairy tale slash mythic kind of narration style just wouldn't have worked as well as the direction she chose to write this book in. But still, after enjoying it so much in the first book, I couldn't help but miss it in this one. But it is what it is. One other thing that I really liked about it is that we got, and this is a part of it being a much more human-centric driven novel, is we did get a big expansion of the more historical fiction elements included in the novel. As part of my research whilst reading different things in this book, and then googling it to find out like what's the backstory, where does it fit. I did find out that one of the things is that, well, a lot of the things included are directly inspired by a very, very key moment in Russia's history, and spoiler, but later on I eventually find out that she did pick what were seminal moments in the formation of Russia pre-USSR, and that's something that she's been building up to. So a lot of the things mentioned in this book, they're not just there for the sake of telling a story. They're there to contribute to what it was quite clear they're there to contribute to what would eventually be the culmination of the trilogy as a whole. But at the end of the day, it's not historical fiction. There are some heavy fantastical elements included. It is what it is. It is a fantasy novel at the end of the day. Overall, I would say it's a good fantasy novel. The majority of it is spent building up for the finale. So, after having read this now at this point, I'm expecting that the finale is probably going to be mind-blowing, because reading through the story, I could see so many different kernels and so many seeds planted that you just know are going to pay off. We do have some pretty big plot points that are going to continue through to the third book that are going to make for some intense reading. And there are still some major mysteries of the series left back that haven't been addressed yet. Like, how does Vasya have her power? Like, what's the story there? We keep reading about this mystery girl that came out of the woods and somehow married a prince of Russia. Like, where does that fit into all of this? What's her story? I'm hoping these are all questions that we can find out in the finale. Yeah, overall, good book. Exciting, mainly because you can just smell the build-up. Still a fun read, even though it does things very differently from the first book. And yeah, let's see. I'm excited to get to the third book. Let's see where this road goes. That's all I have to say for that. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. Let me know if you've read this book. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. If you haven't read it and it sounds intriguing, let me know. And yeah, if you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching.